Not often you see this, only very late GBA games had this. Welcome to Fire Emblem The Sacred Stones, the third Fire Emblem game for the Game Boy Advance, and the second one to be officially released outside Japan. Though it's not a direct sequel to Fire Emblem 7 as many were hoping. I find this is a very underrated Fire Emblem game overall. Yes, it is the shortest game in the series by far, and also one of the easiest, but it has a lot of charm to me. I really like its characters. The general maps have a lot of appeal to me as well. It did some interesting things with the class system as well, and the music is probably my favourite soundtrack on the entire Game Boy Advance library. So, nothing much else to do but get started. And I've got a few of these menus up because I've already done a bit of a practice file, so let's just start a new game right off the bat. We get the option of 3 different difficulties: easy, normal, and difficult. I will be playing on difficult mode, but it's pretty much equivalent to any other Fire Emblem's normal mode. This is a fairly easy game by Fire Emblem standards, though, like I said, by Fire Emblem standards. It still can be pretty difficult by the standards of normal games. Easy will give you tutorials though, and I might show off a bit of extra footage from Easy, because some of the early maps are changed pretty drastically to accommodate those tutorials. On normal or hard though, you get no forced tutorials at all. It's not like FE7 where you had 10 chapters of forced tutorials. So anyway, let's get right into it. Fun fact, the song that you're hearing right now was originally supposed to appear in Blazing Sword. The title drop. Oh yes, Magvel, the one Fire Emblem world that has no implied connections to any other one in the setting, apart from Fate's Landia, I guess. I don't know why he's called the Sage King. He's not a magic user at all. The Kingdom of Johanna, where everyone is awesome, pretty much. Ruled by the Queen of the White Dunes, who is also awesome. I love the way that this is added in an almost My Friends and Zoidberg sense. Oh yeah, Karkido also exists, though it's not really important. Of course it has, because that's how things go in every Fire Emblem game. And they're all just random soldiers who probably shouldn't pose much of a threat, but for some reason they do. Because if he hadn't, the invasion would probably be over instantly. Well, hey, they're sending more powerful soldiers now. Especially considering that the prologue is named... Yeah. Pretty obvious the kingdom is gonna fall. Those 3 chests that you can see there. I always hate it whenever a game shows you chests in a cutscene. We actually have to wait a very long time before we have a chance to get those. Because villains totally take mercy on surrendering people in Fire Emblem. And that's totally wise. I mean, you're only the father of a main character in a Fire Emblem game. I mean, they have long life expectancies, right? This is totally gonna end well, right? And by sending Seth away, the kingdom got rid of its one chance to defend itself. He could probably take on all these enemies single-handedly. And now we're introduced to this guy. Probably one of the most repulsive villains in Fire Emblem history. I love that line so much. Ah, this battle. So many people have tried to hack the game to make it go differently, but it always ends the same way. It's actually more like the game's fault that it rigged itself so that Seth would get hit. Oh yeah, like I said, he's the father of a main character in a Fire Emblem game. Of course he's safe. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. Now, if this sequence looks a little weird to you, it's because this was tutorials in easy mode. And so, we begin our first battle. And we're not actually fighting bandits in our prologue chapter of a Fire Emblem game? What is this? Yep, we're actually fighting Grado's army. And I should mention that on easy mode, this chapter is entirely scripted, just like the prologue of Blazing Sword, and it's impossible to lose. On difficult, though, we have to actually make some effort here. But first, our two party members. We have Eirika, the Princess of Rene's. Firstly, a disclaimer. I am not a low turn count player at all. I don't care about efficiency or anything like that, so please do not take these bios as any kind of guide as to who's viable for a low turn count run, because this is not my intention. These are just my personal opinions on each of the characters. And let's be honest, if you were caring about efficiency, you would just use Seth for everything anyway. Also, I have already done 2 complete Fire Emblem playthroughs that use stat sheets. So if you want an idea of how these stat sheets work, it's probably best you look up my Awakening one on Robin. I feel it will be redundant to explain the ins and outs of everything on these stat sheets again, but Sacred Stones has some stats that either weren't in the other 2 games I've done, or work differently, so I'll explain the parts of these stat sheets that are new. Firstly, this game does not have separate strength and magic stats. You instead have one stat that determines your attack power. For physical units, it's called strength. For mages, it's called magic. But it is functionally the same stat. And so, I'm going to be using Fire Emblem Heroes and Echoes terminology and refer to this stat as attack, for simplicity's sake. Next, there's Affinity. Affinity affects what bonuses the character will give to others when supporting them. To calculate support bonuses, you add the bonuses of both the characters' affinities, then multiply it by either 1, 2, or 3, depending on their support rank, and then get rid of any fractions in the final calculation. The third difference is Constitution, or Con. The way this stat works in the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games is that every character has a starting fixed Con score. Con only increases by promotion or from the very rare body ring item. It can't be raised by leveling up. It not only affects the rescuing system, which we'll talk about later, but also how much speed a character loses from using heavy weapons. If a weapon's weight stat exceeds your con, your speed will decrease by 1 for every point that it exceeds your con by while you have that weapon equipped. This does affect evasion as well as your double attacking rate. Also note that while I have included 2020 averages in these stat sheets, it's mainly for completeness sake. Most people in this game will not reach 2020 due to how short it is. 2010 is probably the highest you'll ever reach without grinding. With all that prep out of the way, I can finally start talking about Eirika. Eirika is our main character at this point, and thus she's forced into all maps, and if she dies, it's a game over. Depending on a certain choice you make later on, this may change. Which is why I have her availability listed as 21 or 15 chapters. It'll all make sense later. Eirika's stat build can be described as essentially being a Myrmidon or Swordmaster, having great skill, speed, and luck, but average to bad everything else. She'll be able to double attack most enemies fairly consistently, but she won't be dealing much actual damage outside of criticals. Which she will admittedly get more often than usual thanks to her high skill and luck. But having to protect such a fragile character can be problematic. Eirika's generally not meant for the front lines, unless she's facing axe users with very low accuracy, in which case she can dodge tank them fairly effectively thanks to this game using true hits. Eirika's actual offense, though, depends on how lucky you get with her strength level ups early on. 40% strength growth is actually not bad by the standards of someone with her general stat builds, but it is still not fully reliable. I have had a practice run where Eirika gained no strength throughout the entirety of the first act of the game, resulting in her leaving many enemies on 1 HP. Her offensive ability isn't really helped by her fairly low 5 constitution, which means she can't use many swords above iron ones without suffering from lower speed. And evasion, the two main claims to fame she has. She does have an exclusive weapon that kinda helps out here, the rapier. She starts with one of these, and not only is it pretty powerful for such a light weapon and has a decent crit rate, but it's also effective against both armored enemies and mounted enemies. Unfortunately, both those classes mainly use lances, and thus have weapon triangle advantage on Eirika, so they're really not the kind of things you want her to be fighting to begin with. It helps in a few situations, but generally if she can't one-shot something with the rapier, she's usually going to be hit back very hard. So I don't find it all that amazing overall. Also, be careful how often you use the rapier earlier in the game, because depending on what choices you make later on, you might not get another one. Overall, Eirika is not the best lord, but we're kinda stuck with her for this point in the game. She does, however, get much better after promotion. Now, normally, when I do the character stats in this game, I'm going to be discussing their promotions. For Eirika, though, I'll hold off on that until it actually happens so as not to spoil it. Like most pre-Awakening lords in the series, Eirika's promotion happens automatically over the course of the plot. Unlike some, Roy, hers actually doesn't happen too late, so she gets a good amount of time to make use of it. And it just so happens that this promotion, plus a certain item that comes with it, patches up a lot of her issues, so she comes into her own more in the later part of the game. Eirika's base stats and growths are unchanged from the Japanese version. And we have Seth, a young commander of Renee's. He's calm, composed, and broken. Most Fire Emblem games have a Jagen, or what TV tropes would call a crutch character. A pre-promote who joins early on in the game with very good base stats, but terrible growths. The idea behind them is to help you through the early parts of the game, but that relying on them too much will harm you in the long run, because they'll end up terrible by the end. As the series progressed though, Jagen characters started getting better, giving them better base stats and much better growth than they had before, making them a lot more useful throughout the whole game. Some people like to call these subtype of Jagens Oifeis. I personally don't, because I think the original Oifei was pretty bad. But regardless of what you call them, Seth is an example of this new trend in Jagens gone horribly, horribly wrong. Or horribly right, depending on your point of view. Seth starts as a pre-promoted paladin with very impressive base stats. In fact, they're comparable to what you'd get from promoting normally at level 20. He's got A ranks in both swords and lances, and starts the game with a steel sword and a freaking silver lance, enabling him to one-round kill pretty much everything in the early game. And you'd expect him to drop off there, right? Well, no. Because he also has very, very good growth rates. In fact, they're better than most unpromoted cavaliers in this game. And Seth will out-average most of them, while also having better con than they ever could hope to have. So essentially, Seth starts out amazing, and ends up amazing, and is amazing all the way in between. Seth is so freakishly overpowered that doing a solo run of the game with just him is considered considerably easier than playing the game normally. And speedruns of this game are pretty much the Seth show, with occasional appearances by other people no one really cares about. Low turn count tier lists rank everyone who isn't Seth based on their ability to help Seth slaughter everything. I am not making this up, this is actually true. He is generally regarded as one of the most game-breakingly overpowered characters in all of Fire Emblem. I think only Sigurd from FE4 and Radiant Dawn Ha give him any kind of competition, and pretty much every challenge run of this game assumes that he's banned outright. For these reasons, I'm going to try and avoid using him if at all possible, except to show off the arena or things like that. And probably to grind some supports with him off camera. I suppose now that I've got that out of the way, I can explain a few aspects of the stat sheets that are going to differ somewhat for pre-promotes. For them, I'll just be listing their straight-up average stats, even with their class caps taken into account, because obviously there's no choice of what to promote them into, you're already locked into what they start as. But I'll also take this time to mention that Paladins have had a slight change since the other two GBA games. They can no longer use axes. I like this change because I always felt that Paladins having the entire weapon triangle was a little ridiculous. But despite that, Seth is still brokenly overpowered. On top of all that, Seth actually got a very slight buff in the English version. So for those who don't know, Sacred Stones is one of the few Fire Emblem games to actually alter the base stats and growth rates of characters from the Japanese version in its English release. Whenever this happens, I'll be showing any nerfs or buffs as either green or red on the stat screen. In this case, there's a little bit of a green bar on Seth's HP growth, because it was buffed from 85 to 90 in the English version. Which puts him tied, with actually quite a lot of people, but still, as the highest human HP growth in the game. Yeah, you're probably wondering why I said human. That won't make sense for quite a while. So, you might see that Seth begins this map already injured thanks to that earlier cutscene, but he completely obliterates everything on this map anyway. If you use Seth, you can end this easily. So, I'm not going to let him hog all the glory. But if I get unlucky here and both of these enemies attack Eirika, she will end up dying, so I find it best to just leave her here and let them come to us. We have our rapier. It's got a pretty decent crit rate on it, and strong against no enemies in this chapter, but fairly decent, and it doesn't weigh Eirika down due to her constitution, thankfully. It's one of the few weapons that doesn't. Anyway, let's fight. Now, something that I should point out is that this game uses what's called true hit. The hit rates you see on the battle screens are kind of a lie. Basically, the game actually rolls two random numbers, averages them, and compares it to what you see there. Because of that, an enemy with a hit rate of 39% actually won't hit you most of the time, like at all. It's a lot more reliable than in, say, Echoes, where hit rates are basically just the raw numbers that are shown. So you'll be seeing low hit rates missing very, very often, and you'll see any hit rate above 70 generally hitting most of the time. Also remember that weapons don't have infinite durability in this one, so be careful how much you use them, especially the rapier, because it actually is very limited. Depending on what happens later in the game, you might not even get another one. And we get epic music for only one enemy left. This is actually a defeat boss mission. But in the beta version, apparently, this one would have been a seize mission. There would have been a house you needed to seize. True warrior, huh? Well, this true warrior has gone into woods, so I don't want to fight him there. It gives 1 defense and 20 evasion, so if I attacked him there, actually, I still have a pretty guaranteed hit rate. But I'd rather him get off that terrain. Also, I definitely like to let this guy make the first move, at least on Eirika. That's my line. Because if I get unlucky and... Well, that was the exact opposite of unlucky. Okay, then. If I get unlucky and he hits, I can heal up next turn. If I'd had Eirika attack first and she got hit, in the unlikely event the boss attacks her and hits next turn, she would die. And wow, that's a great level up. Strength on Eirika this early is excellent. And yep, that's chapter over. Not really that bad. Yeah, she didn't even get hit at all. Usually she tends to get a hit at least once that chapter. Funny thing is, when I first tried difficult mode, way back when I first had this game, basically Eirika got crit by the boss, and I just said, nope, not playing difficult mode again. Now though, now it's actually a lot easier for me. Well, those are mysteries for another day. I'm sorry, but when you're using the word broken in a sentence in front of Seth, yeah, that immediately makes me think of it in the gameplay sense. You may not be broken, but Seth definitely is. So that's the prologue. Not really all that much to that one, but there's a bit of extra footage that I do want to show off here. So, I'm back here on easy mode, and this is about where you'll notice some major differences. So, we have a forced tutorial here. We're forced to move Eirika to where Seth is. Apologies if I'm skipping over the tutorials, but I feel that a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. And I have already covered several Fire Emblem games on this channel before. So this is basically a tutorial on weapons. This is actually kind of important though if you've come into this game from the latest two, which don't have durability. And you want to be very careful of how you use the rapier, because like I said, it's actually a pretty hard weapon to come by. You can't buy them in this one like you can in Shadow Dragon. And that line there. Kinda interestingly, this time the enemy gets to move before you do, because you had your first player phase during that, what is actually a cutscene in hard mode. Or normal. So remember what I said earlier? This is actually completely... Oh, and that dialogue there is exclusive to easy mode. I probably should have shown that. Easy mode actually has quite a bit of extra dialogue because of the tutorials and stuff. So this is a defeat boss mission. Fairly simple, but because there are 2 other enemies right in your way and there's such a narrow area, you pretty much have to kill them both before you kill the boss. So this is our tutorial on doing an attack. And I guess I should take this time to point out that in order to attack twice, you need to have 4 or higher speed than the enemy. Also, your speed will be reduced by your weapon's weight minus your constitution. So, that affects things. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that here, because the rapier just happens to have 5 weight, which is exactly equal to Eirika's constitution, so she's not slowed down at all. Well, this enemy only has 8 HP left. And something I should also mention, if you're used to echoes, echoes actually just show your attack stat outright in the enemy's defense, and you had to calculate it yourself. You can actually turn that option on. It's a different type of combat window that you have the option of using. Also here, this is absolutely hilarious. Actually, wait, not yet. But soon it is. So Seth one-shots that guy. I guess he has less HP than he does normally. Seth normally needs to double. So, watch this. This is the hilarious part of easy mode. Now, on any other difficulty, Seth would absolutely wreck this guy. But on easy, not only is Seth rigged to miss an 88% in true hits, he's also rigged to not double. He would normally double the boss, but on easy mode he doesn't, because they had to let Eirika be the hero here. It's pretty hilarious that Eirika is so broken that, It's pretty hilarious that Seth is so broken that they actually had to outright break the game to make sure that he didn't kill the boss and hog all the glory here. And speaking of breaking the game, notice how Eirika is not doubling this guy? And yeah, this is a total lie. It's actually closer to 99.9 with the way true hit works. And yeah, that's the chance that it will be a critical. This time, it's, I'm pretty sure that true hit applies to crit rate as well, but of course, a critical can only happen if your attack is calculated to hit in the first place. Many people make that misconception, but no, critical is always rolled for after hit. Crits do 3 times damage, so they are extremely dangerous most of the time, as you're about to find out. Yeah, they break the rules again and have Eirika double attack here when she wasn't supposed to, and get an automatic critical. This spawned a bit of a minor meme in the fanbase at one point called Eirika will break the rules to stab you in the face. This was actually partially, I don't know if this was intentional, but it was maybe referenced in Awakening with the weapon Eirika's Blade, which has a brave weapon effect, so it can let you double attack when you normally wouldn't. I like to take that as a reference to here, but yes, this only happens on easy mode. On normal or difficult, everything is exactly as I showed before, and that was a much worse level up. So I'm glad that I'm not playing on this mode. So anyway, that's the extra footage from easy mode that I wanted to show off. I probably won't be showing off much else from easy mode, I just wanted to show that. Sorry for the abrupt cut here, but there was one more thing that I wanted to bring up on easy mode. I read if you hold down a directional button and then L, R, A, and B, you could break out of any time the game forces a character to move. I tried this in the prologue to see if I could actually make Seth kill the boss, but I couldn't get it to work. So I'm gonna have to research this a bit more. So that will be the end of this part. Join us next time for Chapter 1.